everybody. Welcome back to Let's Talk Movies. This is episode number 9. We are your hosts. I'm Brad.
I'm Miguel.
And today we are talking movie remakes. You love them, you hate them, a little bit of both, unsure, all of the above. Miguel, how the hell are you?
Pretty good, man. I mean, I'm currently having a cheat day because, the gym's been closed for 2 days. So, now I'm drinking a beer because, it's a cheat day.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, we live in Kentucky, and Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, all through there. We just got a real nasty winter storm last night, and there's supposed to be more on Saturday and more next week. And the guy on the news said next week is not going to be a good week if you can stay in your house, you should.
Pretty much.
So,
we went through this before, but I don't think this is going to be as bad as it was before. What was that? What year was that? 2004?
2009.
Was it 2009? I could have sworn 2004.
I think there was another one in 2003, but the one I remember is 2009.
Okay, because I remember there was one that we went through in middle school, and I remember they told us, because the two of us went to the same middle school for 1 year, and they sent us to the auditorium. They're like, hey, guys, so this storm is going to get really bad. So, we're just all going to send you home. I could care less. I didn't realize the gravity of the situation.
It's funny because that's ironically before we knew each other.
It is, right?
We had no idea who we were. We went to the same school. We had no idea who I don't remember you.
I'm surprised you didn't, because my family name had a long-standing history in the school system. Just saying, guys, just to let you know, the Miranda boys were not a good name in the school system in Madison County. So it is what it is. But that's surprising that we didn't know each other. I knew our buddy Krishan. The two of us were friends at the time, but I really didn't know you back then.
Nope.
That's
Here
hilarious.
we are now.
I could have sworn we must have been in the same band if you think about it, because the two of us were music people, and I guess we were under Curry Evans too, right?
Yeah, I was Carla Smith when I was in 6th grade, and then Curry.
Okay, I gotcha. That makes sense.
But
yeah, this week's been all right. I got my dad on Game of Thrones. I don't know if you know about that.
Yeah, I've tried. I'm sure I'll try again. I can't do the Game of Thrones thing. And that fantasy adventure, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. For some reason, like that genre of movie, I just can't get into it. I can't.
I hear what you're saying. I didn't like I wasn't really a fan of Game of Thrones all the way up until the last 2 seasons. By the time spoiler alert, everyone, by the time the big bad villains start coming in, that's when I started getting interested, because I was like, ooh, this is new. This steered really way out south. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it out. And I didn't have HBO at the time, and I don't think HBO Max was a thing back then either. So I pretty much just watched YouTube reviews. If you guys checked out the last podcast, if I can't catch a TV show or a movie, I'll just watch the reviews. And I know that belittles the whole experience, but I could care less. I just like to know things about TVs and movies. So that's why this podcast works, boy.
Yeah.
Exactly. What have you seen?
All right. This week we watched first of all, we went and saw The Little Things with Denzel Washington and Jared Leto and Rami Malek.
Yeah.
That movie.
Don't tell me.
It was awesome. It's on HBO Max. Next time you come over, we can watch it. It was really good. It's a good, mystery crime. Jared Leto can play a creepy ass guy, man.
Mm-hmm.
Just really creepy, and it had kind of a weird twist ending that you weren't expecting, almost in the same way that Seven did.
Oh shit! You're comparing that to Seven.
It was good. Seven was a little bit grittier than this. This was a little bit more, just real simple story, more of a mystery thriller kind of thing. But it was really good. We enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I want to check that one, mainly because I like Denzel Washington. And
I love Denzel Washington.
Also, I know Jared Leto kind of gets a bad rep for the Joker thing, but he's genuinely a decent character. He has good chops.
Yeah, he's a good actor. I think that was more of a
script and direction.
Yeah, I don't think that was I think he played the part really well. I just think the tattoos and the weird, I don't know, the way he looked was really the problem. If you put the picture that just came out from Zack Snyder's Justice League, what he's going to look like. He looks
Yeah.
dope.
Mm-hmm.
It looks
Yep.
really good.
I saw those pictures that you sent me the other day, and I realized like he lost all of his tattoos, so I was kind of
Yeah.
confused. I was like, "What does this guy get like laser tattoo removal?" Like I didn't know that was a thing Joker does. So I mean, can you imagine the Joker making an appointment for that? Yeah, that'd be weird.
Yeah.
Kinda
But I mean,
awkward.
it's a different version of the Joker, though. It's not, technically, it's not going to be the same Joker that we saw in Suicide Squad.
Okay.
Because
Oh, I like that.
this Justice League movie is going to be like its own standalone thing. It's not going to be connected to the DCEU.
I'm sure after the success, it probably will.
Well, I mean, that's what they've said initially, is that it's going to be its own standalone thing. Like it's not gonna connect with um like the greater DCEU. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Did you see
but
the teaser trailer that dropped today for that?
was it the one that had the black suit Superman?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just a couple of quick clips, but I
Hmm.
think that trailer drops in, I think
3
it drops
days.
on Monday.
Okay,
It'll
not 3 days.
it'll it'll drop on Monday,
Okay,
which
I
is
gotcha.
I'm pretty excited. I'm not a DCEU guy as much as I am the MCU, but
Hmm.
I'm excited to see that.
Same, and I know the trailer comes out, so we'll definitely have to try to do a trailer reaction to it as well. So
Oh,
you
absolutely.
guys stay up to date. We got more coming for you.
Absolutely. All right, we got, as you guys know, we like to start off our show with a little bit of movie news, talking about what we watched this week. We have a couple of little tidbits of movie news for you. Um, so Tom Holland was being interviewed by Esquire for Cherry, that new Russo brothers film he's got coming out, and he said that he was putting it to bed that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are not going to be in Spider-Man 3.
They taught him well.
I think he exactly. I think he is lying through his friggin' teeth. Um, we've seen actors do that before.
Hmm.
You know, where they lie, and then of course everything that they've lied about has become true. I think, again, like we talked about last week, I think Marvel stressed to him, like, if you screw this up, we're gonna kill you, basically.
Pretty
So
much.
I think he knows the gravity of this.
Hmm.
So I mean, of course he's gonna lie. He's gonna say anything to try to like divert people from the truth.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then like honestly, Tom Holland's absolutely grown as like in the interviews because you see how like he is steadily like keeping things on lower reps.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
he's
and I
absolutely
think
frightened.
part of it before is like he was so excited. You know what I mean? He was young, and I don't blame him. I mean, the kid, he really like grew up fast in terms of like his career.
Hmm.
Like he skyrocketed when he started playing Spider-Man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was in like some smaller movies. There, he was in a movie that had it was whenever it was like a movie where this little island was attacked was like swarmed by a tsunami. Have you seen that one?
No. Oh, yes, yes, yes. It's
Yeah,
about the
that one.
2004 tsunami.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't know the background
Yeah,
to
yeah,
it.
yeah. That's a true story. That's about the 2004 tsunami in Indonesia.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yep.
Well, he was in that one, and he
Yeah.
did a decent job for how
He was
young he
really
was.
young in that one. I think he was only
Hmm.
like 11 or 12 when that came out,
Hmm.
but that was a good
Very
movie.
emotional. Very emotional movie. Absolutely. And
Um,
now he's doing MCU, and now he's doing more serious movies like The Devil All the Time
and Cherry,
and
and yeah,
Cherry. Cherry sounds really interesting. It's gonna be
it
exciting to
does. I
see.
want to see that, and I really like the Russo brothers.
Hmm.
That I
Have
think they're really solid directors.
Do you know about that other movie he's gonna do with uh she played Rey in Star Wars?
Mm-mm.
So I forgot what the name of the movie was, but the premise of it is kind of weird. It's like Rey, the girl that plays Rey, is like back on Earth, and it's like some dystopian era, and she's the only woman there on the planet with a bunch of guys, and the guys have some sort of condition where their thoughts, they can hear their own thoughts, like everyone around them
Mm.
can hear their own thoughts, and I'm just like, that sounds like a bomb. Sorry, guys. I know Ray, and I know that lady plays Ray. Daisy Ridley. There you go. I'm sorry, guys. I know
Yes, yeah,
Daisy
yeah, yeah.
Ridley.
That's her
I
name.
know Daisy Ridley and Tom Holland were in both two like blockbuster series. They're like two blockbuster universes in the movie theater. But this sounds like a bomb. I'm not gonna lie. And but I mean, I'm gonna check it out. So hopefully
Yeah,
it'll
we'll
be
see.
good. Just the whole premise sounds really weird to me. You told me that you've checked out the Mandalorian, haven't you?
Yeah, we're on like episode 4. We haven't watched in a few days just because there's been a whole bunch of stuff going on, but we'll keep watching the Mandalorian. So, but
Yeah.
speaking of the Mandalorian, Pedro Pascal, I had no idea who the hell this guy was before Wonder Woman 84. I had no
Shut the fuck
idea.
up.
I had no idea who he was.
Are you serious?
Swear.
Have you never seen Narcos?
No.
He's awesome in Narcos. He's also
I,
in Game of Thrones too.
and
So
I think he's a great, I mean, from what I've seen him in, I think he's a great actor. I had just never heard of him. And I liked him. I thought he did a good job as Max Lord in Wonder Woman 84. I thought he was, I mean, so far, I think he's great in The Mandalorian, even though you don't really see his face. But it was revealed yesterday that Pedro Pascal has been cast as Joel in the Last of Us series for HBO Max, which I think when I first saw that, I was like, no, no. Because for some reason, I don't know why, in the back of my mind, I know that they could never cast Hugh Jackman for that because I don't think he would do it. But
mhm.
I see Hugh Jackman when I think of Joel or somebody
Okay.
like Hugh Jackman. But I must say, after I look at like they had side by sides of Joel from the game and Pedro Pascal, and I think
Mhm.
if he grows out his beard and they make him look a little bit older, I think he can pull Joel off. The one that gets me, and I'm really like, I don't know, um, Bella Ramsey from Game of Thrones, another Game of Thrones actress. She's playing Ellie.
I mean, if you've gotten to the point of Game of Thrones where you see her act, it'd probably make sense why she was cast. I mean, she's a pretty solid actor for her age. So
And I mean, I bet she's great. I think, especially for HBO Max, and it's such a big property, anyways, that so many people love. I don't think they would have cast anybody because I mean, she's obviously a good actor, but I don't know. Ellie in the video games had a for lack of a better word, a badassness to her. Like she grew up in like that post-apocalypse world, and she didn't get like social cues. Like she curses and she doesn't understand the way the world was before. So like I'm curious to see how this girl portrays her. You know what I mean?
if you saw Game of Thrones, you would understand why she was cast.
Like she's
Like,
very like she's got a really big personality and she's really out. She's not like a tender, sweet little girl. Ellie's a very like she's gonna tell you how it is, and if she thinks what you're doing is stupid, you're an idiot. But I'm only 14 years old, you know.
you need to check out Game of Thrones because when you see her act as Lady Mormont, my God, she is by far one of my favorite characters. She is a total badass, so she could do badass, and
Okay,
that just the way you said it right there just made me more excited to see her
okay.
as Ellie. Yep. So
And to
trust
be
me.
fair, I'm not going to judge a book by its cover. I think I'm really excited that they're doing a live action adaptation of that.
Hmm.
And you know, for a long time, I was like, why don't they do a movie about The Last of Us? Why don't they do it? It could be so good. But I think they're in a good spot to do a series because a series they can break it down a little bit more
Yeah.
instead
Or
of a movie.
is that what they're doing?
Yeah, it's going to be a series
Okay, I
on
like that.
HBO Max. And you know, anything like that, I think it's going to work better because there are so many. That game. Have you played The Last of Us?
I have not, but sorry guys, I've watched YouTube run throughs.
My God, you're an idiot.
That's how I spend my time. When I'm not working and flying and working out, that's what I'm doing. I'm on YouTube watching reviews and walkthroughs.
Well, it's such a good detailed game. Like it's
Hmm.
one of the most. I don't want to say accurate because obviously we don't know what the world would be like if the zombie apocalypse happened. But I mean,
Hmm.
it's so detailed in terms of like not only the storyline but in the world that they created, like
Hmm.
in showing how everything falls apart and showing what would Boston look like 20 years after people were gone. You know what I mean? There's deer running around, the streets are all overgrown, buildings are starting to crumble and deteriorate. It's so cool, and I'm really excited to see how they bring that to the screen.
I
and
think
how
what
they
you're
bring that to life.
I think the word you're thinking of is world building, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and HBO Max is absolutely awesome at that. Or HBO does a really good job. And I'll do another plug-in with Game of Thrones. They do a really good job with world building. And that book that came out, the book that it's based on, it's I mean, that book alone, it could not be a movie. Like it
Mm,
had to be
yeah,
a series.
because
So,
you
I
can't
mean,
fit everything in an hour and a half.
exactly. So, like I like it better when when I hear about a book, like a film adaptation, a live action adaptation of a book. If it's not a series, I'm gonna assume it's gonna suck.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
I
So
can
like
understand that.
yeah. So obviously, like Percy Jackson. I mean, some people liked it, but that wasn't a good adaptation of the book. What's it called? Vampire Assistants. Have you read that book?
I have no idea what the hell that is.
That's a middle school book. But if you guys know what I'm talking about, you guys know what I'm talking about. You Madison County students, you know what I'm talking about. The Vampire's Assistant. That's like I think it's like a 4 or 5 series book. And
Mm,
like when I saw the live action adaptation, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? They just like scrunch like 3 books into just an hour and a half. I was like, good golly, guys. So I mean, so yeah, if I see a live action adaptation of a book and it's a movie, I'm almost gonna assume it's gonna suck almost every time.
gotcha. Well, this last little bit of news we got here, Adam Wingard, who is directing Godzilla versus Kong, um, he announced that they are remaking Face Off, that old action film with John Travolta and Nicolas Cage, and they're remaking that, and Adam Wingard is going to head that project and direct it. Interesting enough. I mean, I'm curious who they're going to cast because I
I mean,
gotta
it
say,
has to be Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, right?
not if they're
Like,
doing a remake. I mean, if they're gonna
come on.
recast it, I
I mean,
I'll tell you what, they got big shoes to fill because I mean, I'm not saying that like they're two of the greatest actors of all time, but they're two of the most charismatic actors of all time. I mean, it's gonna be
exactly.
it's gonna be hard to like match their personality, you know?
Well, I mean, those two were like powerhouse actors of their time. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Hmm.
Like John
Exactly.
Travolta was absolutely amazing in the 70s and the 80s. Nicolas Cage was great in the 90s and then early 2000s. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Before he became crazy Nick.
Willy's
You know what I mean?
Wonderland.
Yeah, well, by the way, that's coming out tomorrow,
Is it
I
really?
think. Yeah, on HBO Max. I'm pretty
We need to
positive.
watch that.
We need to watch it.
I think my gut feeling tells me it's going to be awful, but it's kind of weird that still it makes me want to see it more because I know it's going to be so bad.
Yep,
I don't know.
I'm excited to see it. But again, with the whole face-off thing, I mean, I don't know. I am not I am not a fan of remakes, to be honest. What do you think
Mm.
about that?
Yeah, it that kind of brings us into our main topic today is movie remakes, remaking movies, and kind of the big crux and the big question of this whole thing is does remaking movies do remade films have value, or is it just a guaranteed cash grab? Is it just a guaranteed way that that studio is going to make money because it's a familiar IP, it's a familiar property that everybody knows, and everybody is going to go see it because it's blank? You know what I mean? It's the
Yep.
name that is it the story that you're trying to tell that's selling tickets, or is it the name that people are going to see? And I think that's the big question of this entire thing is do they have value or is it to make money?
Yeah. And I'm on the opinion that movie remakes are literally just cash grabs. That's what I consider them. And I know there's been some like really good ones, but overall, it's just a cash grab. And I mean, let's put some examples out here. Like King Kong, the Eighth Wonder, like that 2000, what was it,
The
2004,
2005,
2005 remake. Like that was a phenomenal movie.
that movie is a masterpiece.
Absolutely. And honestly, it was great to see a remake of Kong because obviously Kong was like a stop motion movie,
Yeah.
and it wasn't given much justice ever since it first came out.
Right.
So then they decided to remake it, and it was absolutely phenomenal. The score was great, the cast was great, and just the animation at the time, the CGI, if I'm saying that right, the CGI
Hmm.
of its time was on spot. So
Yeah.
I mean, that remake itself was a good one. But
Right.
then you have something like, I don't know, like The Day the Earth Stood Still. Like, I didn't think that
Yeah,
was a
that
good
was
one for its
it.
time.
I don't think that was terrible, but it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't like fantastic either. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It was just kind of like whatever.
exactly. Like,
But
not many people are interested.
yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to familiarity and nostalgia
Mm-hmm.
because if you really think about it, in a lot of what these remakes are is instead of finding a new story to tell, they're going back and they're just trying to revisit the nostalgia of that time period. And I fall into this too because I think we weren't even alive in the 80s, but there's something about 80s movies that makes you feel nostalgic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
More so than any other decade. And I can't even necessarily really explain it other than I think pop culture was starting to really like take off isn't the right word, but it was reaching like an all-time high for that point. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You look at old shopping malls and everything was in neon. Shopping malls were starting to open and it was just like this whole crowd deal. Fashion was really, really changing like pretty greatly.
Mm-hmm.
Just there were so many different things that fed into that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And like, whenever I keep thinking of these movie remakes, like back then, like I know I wasn't born during most of the original of all these remakes that we're seeing now. Like, I grew up with the remake of Footloose. You
yes.
know what I mean? But then
Mhm.
when I saw the original Footloose, I was like, fucking hell, this is night and day.
Way
Like,
better.
way better. I saw
Yeah.
Footloose literally at a drive-in 5 months, 6 months ago in the summer. Like,
The
that was
new
the
one
first
or
time
the original?
the original.
Oh,
That was
okay.
the first time I saw it like all the way through, and I
Yeah.
absolutely loved it. It was a great movie. And so then whenever I keep thinking of the remake of Footloose, I'm like, it doesn't really
Yeah.
match up to the amount of I don't know what that feeling is. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, that feeling of just like watching the original movie compared to the remake?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I don't think it's like a nostalgic feeling. It's just like
Yeah.
original is better, I guess.
Well, I think in a big way, movies are a product of their time. You know what I mean? You going back to, think about King Kong. You know, we laugh at that original 1933, I believe, stop motion Kong film.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think about it at the time, I mean, that was a time when, the world wars were starting. We were starting to go to war. People were starting to think about more than just their little bubble. And I think that movie came at that time of exploration and, um, we were reaching new heights in terms of like technology and what we were learning about the planet, what we were learning about ourselves. I mean, that original stop motion Kong on the top of the Empire State Building, like, moving around like that, swiping at the airplanes. I bet you that was fucking terrifying. I mean, seriously, I bet you sitting in a movie theater watching that, people's mouths were on the floor.
Yeah, and it it's the same principle as like when the first Godzilla came out in 1954. Like, it was frightening. People were scared of these movies. Like, it was considered a horror movie. And when you look
Yeah,
back at them, I'm almost certain but there's like some of those like monster movies. It's just like a diorama of a town, and they just like slapped
yep,
an iguana, just
yeah,
made it walk through town.
yeah.
Like, that was horror. That was horrifying to people. And now we're looking at it, we're like, someone pick up Gerald's iguana. He got it
Yeah,
on set. Yeah, I was
yeah,
like, so I mean, I don't know. When it comes to like when it's that far back and it's that far dated, it makes sense to do a movie remake. You know what I
Right.
mean? But
Yeah.
then like when you enter like the 80s and the 90s of these movies, like they still have substance. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They have the substance and they have the same deliverance as it did before.
Because it wasn't that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
wasn't. It what of yeah. I mean, it was 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but it
Dang, really?
wasn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird to think that the 90s was 30 years ago, but it was. And
Ugh.
like, but I mean, if you think back to even the 50s or the 60s, I mean, that was a long time ago now. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that kills movies is the space in between when the original came out and when they remake it.
Mm-hmm.
That kills remakes because I mean, if you think about like King Kong, exactly like you just said, Peter Jackson's King Kong from 2005,
Mm-hmm.
that movie was stunning. It was breathtaking because there had been enough time between the original Kong
Mm-hmm.
and there were sequels scattered in between that were okay. You had Son of Kong, you had King Kong Lives, but you had the original Kong film, you had the 1976, I believe, remake, which was decent. It was fine. Kong was a little bit, it was a little weird at that one. He was a little, he got a little creepy with Anne in that movie. The original, he was
Yeah.
more of a monster. The second one, like his face, he was always like look at like the way he looked at her was like really creepy and weird. But and
Yeah.
then you had the new one, but the new one it brought something new. It kept the mystery and the big
The
what am
adventure.
I yes it I don't know what I was trying to say right there. I was just
They
spewing out
created
words.
they expanded the world of Skull Island, if that makes sense. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
they added. It was like world building, like you just said. They
Mm-hmm.
added to the story, but they didn't take away what made the original one so great. If
Exactly.
that makes
Because
sense.
I know it does make sense because like King Kong King Kong in the original one, like they were limited by the technology that they had.
Right. Which is
Which
fine. It like I
understandable,
said,
yeah.
for then, I'm sure that was cutting edge. That was
Mhm.
amazing for the time.
And I agree. It's the same way with have you seen the new remakes of Clash of the Titans?
I didn't like it at all.
You didn't like that one? But I mean,
I didn't think it was great.
okay, yeah, I understand why. But when you compare that to the original in 1981, like that's again, that's only 40 years ago
Yeah.
compared to King Kong,
Right.
but it's night and day as to how good it was because have I mean, what
Yes.
do you like the new Clash of the Titans more than the original? Have you seen the
No.
original? I've
I don't
seen
think
the
I haven't
original.
seen the original.
That was a it was a middle school assignment where we had to watch it and do a review. Yeah, when I saw Clash of the Titans, the original one, it was decent. It was good for its time, but whenever I saw the new updated one and the remake, that was phenomenal, and especially with the CGI that they added into it, and they expanded the story, they expanded the world that was surrounding it. So like, I guess when it comes to a remake, you have to keep the original essence of the movie and its core values and then expand it, but not lose its character. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I think wanting to revisit, that's why I said movies are a product of their time. And I
Mm-hmm.
think people recognize that, even if it's subconscious, and they want to revisit what made that so spectacular and such a spectacle. That's why we keep going back to the 80s. That's the same reason that we go back to what was once new. Look at vinyl.
That's coming back.
People crave nostalgia. They
Mm-hmm.
crave it. They now vinyl's coming back and CD. Go try to find me a CD, a CD dial somewhere. You can't. There's
Yeah,
like there'll be an entire aisle of vinyl, and then there's this like one little end cap of CDs. You know what I mean?
yeah, I know what you mean. And
So I think, we're even seeing movies from the 2000s being remade now. But, even if you look at 80s horror, I mean, in the early 2000s, there was this like craze. I mean, you had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from 2003. You had the Dawn of the Dead remake from 2004. Halloween got remade. A Nightmare on Elm Street got remade. Friday the 13th got remade. It was just like people, they couldn't help themselves. It was just like boom, 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 boom. We got to remake it. We have to revitalize it. We have to bring something new.
Hmm.
And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And I think that's true for all remakes, is that sometimes if it's done really well, it can be great. But if it doesn't, if they take away those core values, like you just said, you can ruin it.
Yeah. Do you and like I can almost tell, I don't know about you, but I can almost tell whenever I see a remake coming in, I could tell just from the trailer if it's keeping its
Right.
keeping its roots.
If
So
it's
like
got the same vibe to it.
exactly. So like I can't think of a movie. So like here for instance, again, this is a Godzilla plug. Whenever King of the Monsters came out and I saw the director for it and when they had an interview of him, I could tell from how he was talking that he was a Godzilla fan. Like he was a true believer of the franchise and he wanted to revitalize it and
Mhm.
show the world, the newer generation, how great this franchise is. And then you have movies like The Mummy,
Mm.
which with Brandon Fraser, which by the
Yeah.
way is a very underrated actor and deserves an absolute comeback. And we could talk about that later. To let you know. But back when The Mummy came out, like that was a good movie. That was a blockbuster.
It
Universal did
was.
a great job. It was a theme park and everything. Like it was a blockbuster.
It was a good movie.
Yeah, and then you have again, much respect to Tom Cruise. Again, Scientology, don't come after me, but that movie sucked. I'm gonna be honest. It had a good premise. Like I knew what they were trying to do with like building the universe, but it just didn't nail on the coffin with it didn't it was the final nail on the coffin is whenever like it just didn't connect anything with the original.
Yeah.
They
I
try to
to
create
be
something new.
to be honest, I didn't even see it. It didn't interest me. I didn't even care to see it.
Yeah, a lot of people did.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, when I was in college, our music theory professor had said, you know, it's a common question, our music composers running out of new material, or because of they've broken all the rules that you can break, are they going to run out of new music to write? Are we at a point where Hollywood is running out of new stories to tell? What do you think?
Oh shit, that is a good question.
It's a deep question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Jesus
Putting you
Christ,
on the
man.
spot now.
Oh dang. Hold on. I
You gotta
gotta get
sip.
it.
You gotta take a
I
sip.
I gotta get a drink for that one. Um, I think so. To be honest, I haven't seen. When was the last like absolutely original movie you've seen? Because that's hard.
Probably what we just saw. What's it called? Oh,
But then you said it reminded you of Seven.
yeah,
So it
but the
followed.
it's
So it,
still
it
different.
followed.
It
It followed the same formula as a mystery.
it wasn't necessarily the same formula. It was still its own. It was still something new.
Mm-hmm. Okay. See, that's why I was kind of like attracted to that movie because it was like, okay, this steers away from like what we've normally been
Hmm.
introduced over the last years because we've entered because the movie Hollywood has entered to this universe expanding
Yeah.
side of Hollywood. So like almost everything has to be connected to a certain degree in
Right.
hopes of a universe being built. So whenever I see a standalone movie, like whenever I heard about the standalone movie, like what you saw, like I was like, okay, this is interesting because it's a standalone movie. I don't expect there to be a sequel, but and the storyline it fits its own uh theme or what's it called? Yeah, it fits its own category as like a murder
Right.
mystery.
Hmm.
And it sounded like a really good original movie, so I was excited for it because we haven't seen that in a while because it's mainly just remakes.
Well, and I don't know. It's hard because I think I understand what you're saying, and I don't necessarily even disagree with you. But I think innately we will always find new stories to tell. I think people will always find new stories to tell because, like I said before, movies are a product of their time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
moving forward over the next 5 years with everything going on with Corona, I do not. It will not surprise me if we start seeing more movies, thriller, horror movies, action movies about contagion and health and things like that, because it's what's going on right now. It's what people
Mm-hmm.
are afraid of. It's what people are invested in. You know, even if you look at the MCU, I mean, the MCU couldn't have happened 30 years ago
No.
because people weren't in the right mindset for that universe world building thing. It was one-off movies, or it was a million endless sequels, like that whole 80s horror craze thing. You know what I mean? And we love them. We still watch them. I love them. But I think I don't think we're ever going to run out of new material because our world is changing. Our lives are changing every single day. I don't think that you can. They may be similar. They may
Mm-hmm.
follow a similar formula, and you will have movies that follow the same exact formula. I mean, that's just it's inevitable. But I think in the grand scheme of things, we won't run out of new stuff to tell because the world is constantly changing and people's experiences are constantly changing, so they're going to write about new things, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah. And
So
I like that thought that you had with the whole COVID thing because I can almost see a lot of movies coming out with that same theme.
yeah,
Like I could see a lot of movies coming out with you know, thoughts about like pandemics and viruses and stuff. And it's not
yeah,
going to be, you know, like the whole zombie stuff. It's just going to be about how the world reacts with the pandemic.
right,
And that's I would like to see a couple movies come out with that.
yeah,
But and I see what you mean like there's whenever you talked about like the whole like has all the rules already been broken? Um I think everything has been I think everything has already been tapped, so to speak, in regards to movies because we have all these different types of categories that when a new movie comes out, oh, it just falls into this category
a
because it's already
genre,
been done before. Yeah, into
right,
this genre. So like whenever I see or hear a trailer about a new movie coming out and I can't fit it in a genre, like that's exciting for me. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
because
I
it's
can't.
new, it's
Yeah.
unfamiliar, you can't categorize it.
Mm-hmm.
It's new, it's something that you've never seen it before. So
It's so yeah. I mean, it's like what's it called? What's that movie with Nick Cage? The new one? I totally
Willy's
forgot the name.
Wonderland,
Yeah, I don't know what category to put that in. Is it a comedy? Is it a horror? Like I can't really figure it out.
horror comedy. But you know, we're not just seeing this in movies, we're seeing it in video games too. You know, like they're Resident Evil, they're systematically remaking every Resident Evil game of the main storyline. They've already
Mm-hmm.
remade 0 and 1, they've remade 2 and 3. They've already announced Resident Evil 4 is being remade. And then you know, you have to ask yourself, and this goes back to the time in between remakes and the original, at what point do you stop? You know, Resident Evil 5 came out, I believe, in 2012,
Mm.
2013 is when Resident Evil 5 came out. That
Yeah.
wasn't that long ago. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
wasn't very long ago. And then Resident Evil 6 came out in what, 2016, 17, somewhere in there. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. So I think that's the other question is where do you draw the line? You know, how much time does there need to be in between the original incarnation of something and the remake?
What's the statute of limitations for whenever
Yes.
a remake? Yeah.
Let's write
I was gonna.
Congress and sign that into
Yeah.
law.
I don't really know because I can't think of a movie that like there's a big gap between these remakes because if you think about it, like Planet of the Apes, do you remember Planet of the Apes? And
Yeah,
like the old one, like that came out. I don't remember. It was like in the 70s.
yeah. I think it was in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah, and then Planet of the Apes came in 2001, and then the storyline with Caesar that came out, 2010s. So I'd say. So I mean, I don't know. Is 10 years enough?
I don't know.
I
And,
that's
and
like a whole decade already.
here's what it comes down to for me. The whole entire thing comes down to them asking themselves, does does remaking a film serve the story that you're trying to tell? And I think if it does not serve the story in any way, or you're not switching things enough creatively that it's going to suit the storyline,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it needs to be remade. If you look at Black Christmas, I know you've never seen that. I had actually just seen the original Black Christmas for the first time last December. But I mean, that's been remade twice. The first one from 2006 was decent, it was okay. And then they remade it again a couple years ago, I think in 2018. It was so far removed from the original concept of what the original Black Christmas. It's similar to Halloween. It's a good thriller horror movie where it's
Mm-hmm.
just creepy and weird. Uh, but it was the remake from a few years ago. It's just so far removed, and it's such a complete. It's like they took the shell and just stuffed it with whatever they possibly could. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah,
think at that point, then you're wasting your time because you're not adding anything new. You're not like it doesn't. You're like you said before. You're stripping away the bones of what made the original one so good and
exactly.
so interesting.
And whenever you talked about the way you're talking about Black Christmas, because I'm right now, like like don't get me wrong, guys, like I enjoy some remakes. Like again, the franchise of Planet of the Apes, like that's a really good example of a
Yeah.
remake, but keeping the same roots.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's really interesting and like well, not necessarily because like in the original one, like they're at like the Planet of the Apes, right? Like and like they're all dealing with like all of these apes that have grown up to be that like evolved to be human like and they take over. But then with the newest remake with the storyline with Caesar, like it started out with humans and it pretty much shows how it all plays out. Like that's interesting, even though it's technically a prequel. If you think about it, it is a remake of the original Planet of the Apes,
Right.
but it enhances the story because it shows what happens before and then it transitions to what happens what will happen.
Yeah.
And I think that remake was pretty spot on in keeping the essence of it kept the essence of fear of what happens if if apes I guess
Right.
fucking get smart and take over the world. Like
Well,
it's a scary thought to have and it kept that thought throughout this new remake.
and I think that the other thing that made that really successful, and it's the same thing that made the Invisible Man remake from last year so successful. Did you
Hmm.
see the Invisible Man?
I haven't seen the new one.
It was really good. And the same thing with the Planet of the Apes, the newer trilogy. They revitalized it. They did something new, but again, it served the story they were trying to tell. They weren't doing something new just to switch it up and do something new.
Hmm. Yeah.
They were
And
serving the story and the characters. I mean, I think it was really smart to have it like the Contagion kind of thing, like they did, where it was was it the gas or whatever it was that like made them smart or something like
yes.
that.
And
Um,
then apparently the disease that they had was killing all
yeah,
these humans. Yep.
yeah, it was really well done and really smart, and it was a new 21st century take on the original story. Same thing with the Invisible Man, the original of the Invisible Man movie. You could see him. He was basically wrapped up, so he was invisible. You couldn't see him,
Mm-hmm.
but he was there. This new incarnation of the Invisible Man, he was it was a bodysuit that he had created that like used light and stuff to physically make him invisible. Like if he was in the room behind me, you couldn't see him. He was invisible. And it's things like that. I think when you bring it into the 21st century and it's serving the story, and there's been enough time in between the original and the film you're remaking, that's when I think you create the best remakes. You know what I mean?
I
But
agree.
it has to serve the story, man. You can't remake a movie just for the sake of remaking a movie and slapping your name on it. You can't, because it's never gonna work.
Pretty much. And honestly, like there's been like I don't know if you noticed, there's been a lot of movies that I've watched and I was like, wow, this is actually a pretty decent movie. And then I find out like that's a remake. I'm like,
Yeah,
really? So like have you ever had that moment like where you watch a movie that you have that you don't know nothing about and you're watching like oh wow, that's cool, but then you realize it's
yeah,
a remake.
hmm
Have you
yeah.
experienced anything
I
like that?
I had actually just watched something the other day, and I don't remember what it was. The Uptown. I think that's what it was. The Uptown with Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
I think that was.
That's
I could be wrong, but I believe that's a remake.
it's apparently that movie was I think it's a movie from across the pond. And
Oh,
then
okay.
they remade it here.
Okay.
So I mean that's technically that's a remake.
Or the
And
Upside. The not the Uptown. I'm thinking freaking Billy Joel. Uptown Girl. That's what I'm thinking.
yeah, I know
Um,
what you mean.
but yeah, I've had those moments, and the other thing is, I think a lot of times remakes, they explain too much. They go too far into the backstory. Like if you look at I think Rob Zombie's Halloween remake is okay. I do
Mhm.
not like what he did with the last three quarters of the second one. But if you look at the original Halloween, because of course I have to throw a Halloween plug in here somewhere. The original Halloween was so good because you didn't know why Michael went crazy. You didn't know why he did what he did. He just did it for no reason. There wasn't a reason. He did it, and he was a little kid who was normal, and he just snapped for no apparent reason. Rob Zombies, it gave him a trailer trash backstory, and his mom was a stripper, and his daddy beat him, and it was just like it, you. I don't need to see that. You
That's
know what I mean?
information that yeah, that's information that we don't want to see. Like we much rather we much rather keep the imagination of wondering, oh,
Yeah,
why is he doing it?
yeah.
Like,
Well, and I think when you're dealing with a villain, so many remakes do this, especially when you're dealing with villains. Is I know there are cases where you sympathize with the villain almost. Look at Darth Vader. I think you hate Darth Vader for the first half of that trilogy, but then you kind of start to get it. Like you understand almost. You know what I mean?
no, listen, I'll go on a total tantrum with this right now because I get what you're saying with the whole like horror movie-ish kind of thing. Because like you don't really care what their motives are. It's just terrifying to see them.
Right.
But when you talk about a villain, like the 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 reason why a villain is so good is because you can sympathize with them. You can see because when you see a really good villain, you could see them understand why they're doing it. Like they are their own hero in their own story. And
Thanos.
yeah,
I
exactly.
think Thanos is the perfect example of that.
Absolutely with Thanos. And what made Infinity War so great was that it didn't make the Avengers the core people in the movie. It made Thanos. Like you saw why Thanos is doing it,
Right.
and you saw the choices he made, and it basically reflected back to you because a good villain is someone that you can relate to because he's just someone that made a decision in their life and it turned them into the decisions that you and I could have made later in life if we had been given that same choice. We would have
Absolutely.
taken either one, and we make that connection. So when you have that connection with the villain, it makes them even more. um, enjoyable to watch
Right.
because you see yourself in these villains. Again, with Loki, you could see why he was such a great villain because I mean the choices he made and the decisions he had to make, like you could see yourself making those decisions yourself. And with
Absolutely.
Darth Vader, when you think of Darth Vader and you look at the prequels, you can see how he turns into Darth Vader, and the emotions he had are emotions that we've probably felt at one point in our lives, and he just happened to make a decision that hellfire destroy the universe.
Yeah.
So like I mean that's why you connect with those villains so well because some writers and directors are able to encompass a mirror that shows ourselves into the villain.
They make you understand why they do what they do.
Exactly, and you can understand why they're doing it because they believe they're the hero in their own story.
Right. And I think I completely agree with you in what you're saying. And I think for horror movies, it is a little bit different
It
because
is.
you don't, look at, look at, I don't even know.
Yeah, look at
Freddy has a serious motive. Jason has a motive, but I mean, Michael, Leatherface, even. It's like Norman Bates from Psycho. You don't. It's almost scarier if the guy chasing you with the knife is doing it for no reason because you can't reason with them, you can't
mhm,
bargain, you can't ransom. There's nothing you can do. There's no. You didn't do anything to cause it. It's just
mhm.
for no reason they're doing it. And I think that the fact that you don't sympathize with them makes it scarier. But then, of
Yeah,
course, like what
absolutely.
Rob Zombie did in his Halloween movie, you almost kind of maybe feel bad for Michael at the beginning. And it's like, well, if anybody grew up in that house with that life, of course you'd be messed up. But at the same, I don't know, it gets messy at that point. When you try to explain too much, it gets messy.
Exactly. So let me connect that back to our core thing. Whenever, yeah, because so like
We
when
went
it
off
came
on a
to the
tangent there.
we did when it came to like that remake, like horror movie has its core themes that it needs to follow, and like you said, a good horror villain or monster isn't someone that you can connect with. It's just this psychotic person that is just blank face and just has one common goal in mind, which is just kill the antagonist.
Right.
And that's a scary situation because I mean, but whenever Rob Zombie did his little backstory, which I'm sure some people liked it, it took the essence of that movie away because
Right.
the fear of that movie was a guy in a white mask. You can't see his face, you can't see his emotions. All you knew is that he was a killing machine and he was going after the main character. And that's a frightening thing because you can
Right.
put yourself into the shoes of the main character being chased by Michael Myers. But whenever you give that backstory, you take that away and it just becomes this weird icky like psychological thriller
Yeah.
because you don't know
You
you
don't
don't
know
know
what to
who to root
think.
for. Yeah, you don't know technically you don't know who to root for,
Yeah.
honestly. And when you watch in a horror movie, you want to root for the protagonist that's being
The
chased
person
by
that's
the
not chasing you with the chainsaw.
exactly. So like that's so Rob Zombie did have good intentions in wanting to create a backstory because some people want that mystery solved,
Absolutely.
but some people also just want to keep that mystery alive.
And it worked for his movie. I mean, I'm not saying I don't hate it. I
Mhm.
actually think his is one of the better remakes of all the movies we've talked about. I think his is pretty good. Now, H2, we're gonna do an episode on Rob Zombie's Halloween's pretty soon, but you know, I don't think any of these directors, no matter what genre you're talking about, I don't
Mhm.
think anybody who remakes a film sets out to make a bad movie.
Not at all.
I do not think that they do that.
Yeah.
But the issue is you have to ask those questions that we've been asking this entire time. Does it serve the story? Are you adding anything that supports the story? You know what I mean? Things like that. And I think I don't know. And I mean, what do we know? We're two assholes that don't have any idea what we're talking about. We're not filmmakers. We're not writers. But it's just I think from my point of view as an audience member, I've watched remakes before and I've been like, why did you remake that? Like Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters. And I don't say this. I know when somebody bashes the new Ghostbusters, they're like, "Oh, you're saying it because it's all girls." No, I think that's fine. I don't care if they remake it with all girls. That's cool. But the movie was so bad. You know what I mean? It was like a spoof. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like watching a spoof of the original Ghostbusters, which is
Hmm.
an awesome film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's just, yeah, when it comes to those, I don't know. It's tough to have an opinion on those movies because like I get why directors want to do remakes because they want to do their own take on
Right.
an original classic.
They want to do their own take on what they grew up with from the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s.
Exactly, which again is just a renaissance of just absolute killers
Yeah.
in the theaters. But I personally believe you got to leave it where it was. You got to understand, like, that was great for his times. And unless you are enhancing the story, building the world further, and keeping the essence of the movie, don't make a remake.
Right.
And I'll stand firm by that.
Hmm.
And I don't know. It's just, how can I put this? It's like what's done has been done, which is
Right.
where the question comes like, have we reached the point of coming up with new original ideas because of this, because we're going through a phase of remakes. Like, let's be honest.
We really are.
Like, we really are.
And I think from the early 2000s to where we are now. So really, I mean, if you look at the last 20 years, I mean, I think we are in remake heaven right now. And of course, they were remaking movies in the 70s and 80s and 90s. I mean, look at A Star is Born. Obviously, the new one just came out and it's phenomenal with
Hmm.
Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. It's really, really good. But that movie's been remade 4 times since the original one. I mean, it's become like a standard. Like, I mean, I guess, we just had that one come out a few years ago, and then in 20 years, they're going to be like, oh, guess it's time to go make A Star is Born again. Like, it's just become normal that they're going to remake that movie at some point.
Yeah.
So I think that, that's where I'm going to leave it is you have to serve the story in some way. When you have an original movie that's so good and is so great and such a classic that people adore and people keep coming back to over and over again,
Hmm.
if you're going to remake it, you have a big shoe to fill in making sure that you're bringing your audiences, you're bringing it into the 21st century, but that you're serving the story you're trying to tell. And
I
that's
100% agree.
that's where I'm going to leave it.
That's fair. I agree too. And it's just, whenever I keep thinking of all these original movies, like, I want to rewatch them every single time. But when it comes to the remakes, like, I really don't have any like um motivation to want to rewatch them because I mean, like, why would I want to rewatch a remake when I can rewatch the original that has everything that it's offered already?
Right.
So
And
I mean, it's just, I don't know. That's where I'll leave it too. Like, I would much rather rewatch the original than watch a remake, and I'll stand by that. And it's tough for me to say that because I am a Godzilla fan, and most of their movies are remakes. But you know why I keep watching every single one of them is because they keep the same core value of the original 1954.
right.
That's
And
why.
I think what you just said about why would you watch a remake when you could watch the original if it's so much better, excuse me. I think that's why you're seeing what David Gordon Green and Blumhouse is doing with Halloween, where they're doing sequels to the original one.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, yes, you're bringing it into the 21st century and you're doing all of those things, but it's still a sequel to the original one. You're playing off of the nostalgia
Mm-hmm.
and you're feeding that to people, but you're also getting to do it in your own way. So I think that's why we're starting to see more of that, and especially even with the DCEU and bringing Keaton's Batman back, they're finding new ways to bring these old IPs back without rebooting it constantly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
So
I agree. But yeah, I mean, we pretty much hit the nail on all these remake stuff. I mean, again, like I'm not saying I hate remakes. There's plenty of great remakes out there, and it's just some of them. There's been just been a lot more misses in these remakes, which is why like I thought of this topic. And also shout out to my boy Chris because we also talked about it as well. And I thought this was a great topic to talk about because I mean this is obviously something everyone thinks of when they see a trailer of a remake of a movie. It's like, do we really need this remake? Like, do
Yeah.
we? But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, that's my 2 cents. And honestly, like, is there any other like remakes coming out that we know of other than Face Off?
Not that I can think of off the top of
Yeah,
face off, think off.
yeah.
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, but
Mhm. But I
um,
mean, like, I don't know. Maybe this Face Off remake would be good. I mean, again, the original Face Off movie wasn't that great either, to be honest.
it's decent.
I mean, it was
It's
decent, but
okay.
it wasn't one of those. That was made in the '80s, right?
I believe
Or
so. Could
'80s
be
or
or
'90s.
could be early '90s. I'm
Yeah,
not entirely sure.
it wasn't one of those blockbusters of the decades.
Hmm.
Which also that's another that's probably another reason why these remakes are happening because I've seen I think the reason why they're remaking Face Off is because it didn't do too well. It wasn't one of the top movies of
Hmm.
its time. So maybe they can make it a top movie now.
Gotcha.
You think that's probably a possibility? I mean, it could be. That's probably another reason why people do remakes. And again, but you risk losing the essence of the movie of why it was made in the first place. You risk the themes and all that stuff. So I don't know. Again, I am I'm all for remakes sometimes, but I do know there are some really bad ones out there.
Yep.
So that's my 2 cents.
I think there's a give and take, and you know you have to serve the story, and you know sometimes you're going to hit the nail on the head, sometimes you're going to fall short, and it's okay. I mean, there are remakes that I still watch, I still love, even
Mm-hmm.
though of course the original blows them out of the water, and I think 95% of the time the original is going to blow the remake out of the water. But
Yeah, pretty
you
much.
know, you still love them. We still deal with them. Guys, that is going to do it for us for episode number 9 of Let's Talk Movies. We want to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to hang out with us, to chill with us. We want to hear your comments and your thoughts. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave us a comment. If you are listening on Spotify or wherever else you listen to podcasts, I would love it if you would tweet at us at We Talk the Movies. Let us know, what are your favorite remakes? What do you think of movie remakes? Are they just a cash grab for Hollywood, or is it a new way of still revisiting and retelling these old stories? We want to hear what you have to say. Next week, we are talking our top 10 favorite movies of all time, and I am excited for that. That's going to be a good one.
Yep.
We're also celebrating our 10th episode all next week. We're going to have a whole bunch of new content dropping. We have got a new look coming out that I've been working on, and I think we both dig it so far. And then we are actually going to go live on Instagram as we film episode number 10 on Friday night of next week. And we would love to see you there. We would love to answer your questions, have you on as we film this episode. So that is all leading up to episode 10's release. Yep. So if that will do it for us, yeah, I'm pretty hyped. That's going to be a fun one, man. We're at our 10th episode already.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. And how long have we been doing this? About a month already?
Been about a month and a half.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I mean, I want to thank you all for listening. If you've been with us since the beginning, and if you've been listening, thank you so much for listening and for taking the time out of your week to hang out with us.
So. Same here, guys. And if you still like it, and if you guys like what we have to say, just keep sharing it with your friends, and let's continue to grow, guys. Again, absolutely. I'm still shooting for that 100 followers, guys. Let's keep it going.
Yep. All right, guys. We will talk to you guys soon. Be ready for next week. Peace.
Peace.